Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. We love to tackle big topics here, and today is no exception. We're going to be unpacking the hows and whys of intelligence.
Oh, it's a good one.
So not just like how our brains work, but why they work the way they do in the first place.
It's like we get this smartphone,
Yeah.
and it's jam-packed with incredible technology, and we use it every single day. But how often do we really stop and think about all of the complex processes that are happening right there under the screen?
That's like magic.
Yeah, total
We'd
magic.
expect it to work, and we take it for granted. It's like navigating a crowded street or holding a conversation or learning a new language.
Yeah,
We do these things and don't really think about them.
we do.
It's mind-blowing how much is going on out there when you think
Right.
about it.
Absolutely. One of the theories that attempts to unpack this is the deep continuity hypothesis.
Okay. Deep continuity hypothesis.
Yeah.
What's the elevator pitch?
So imagine those incredible nature documentaries where you see evolution in action. Life is constantly adapting, constantly becoming better suited to its environment. The deep continuity hypothesis essentially says that our minds, our cognition, work in a surprisingly similar way.
So you're saying our brains are like little evolution labs, constantly experimenting and finding new ways to thrive in the world.
Yeah, constantly on this treadmill of evolution in a
Yeah.
way, right? And one of the ways this happens is through this constant cycle of generating thoughts and then selecting the most relevant one.
Oh, that's interesting.
Our thoughts beget thoughts.
I like that.
Process of reproduction and selection happening in our minds all the time.
That's a really cool way to put it. It's our thoughts actually adapting and evolving based on what we're experiencing in the world.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does this play out in our lives? What's the takeaway for our listeners?
So think about learning a new skill. Maybe it's playing an instrument or learning how to code. It feels really clunky at first, right? But as you practice, what's happening is your brain is starting to adapt. It's making connections. It's finding more and more efficient ways to process that information.
Was getting better at it.
Exactly. That's deep continuity in action. Your brain is becoming more fit for that task, just like those creatures we were talking about in nature documentaries.
So the more we challenge our brains, the more adaptable they become.
Totally. And the more aware you are of this process, the more you can actively participate in your own cognitive evolution. You know what I mean?
That's cool.
Seek out new experiences, embrace challenges, and watch your brain rise to the occasion.
I love that.
Uh.
Okay, so it's not just about some fixed intelligence we're born with. It's more about how we use and adapt our brains throughout our lives.
Totally.
Now, I'm curious about this whole brain on autopilot thing. It sounds both relaxing and terrifying at the same time.
Well, let's dive into that next because it's all related to this incredible ability that our brains have to constantly adapt and navigate this world around us.
Brain on autopilot. Someone who's constantly got like a dozen tabs open mentally, this one really speaks to me. So where do we even begin?
Have you ever noticed how your mind will occasionally wander even when you're trying to focus on something?
Especially when I'm really engaged in a topic, which hopefully this is.
Right.
I find that my brain wants to go down all these side roads and tangents.
Absolutely. That's a feature.
Okay.
That right there, that's your default mode network kicking in. Essentially, what this network is doing is it's allowing your brain to explore possibilities and make connections, even when you're not consciously directing it to do so.
So even when we think we're like laser focused, there's this whole other level of processing going on in the background.
Yeah, another layer.
I love that.
And this is our ancestors needed to be able to focus on a task, like hunting or gathering, but they also had to be vigilant for danger.
You don't want to be so focused on picking berries that a tiger sneaks up on you.
Exactly. It was a very adaptive trait.
That's so cool. There's this balance between focusing on the task at hand, like us right now, absorbing this deep dive, but then also allowing our minds to wander a little bit, to explore new connections. I'm really good at that, like productive procrastination.
It all comes together.
It all makes sense now.
It's this dynamic interplay that allows us to really hone in on what is truly relevant.
How does our brain determine relevance in all this noise? Is there a secret formula or something?
It's not so much a formula as a principle, and it's actually called optimal grip. Think of it this way when you're trying to grasp a new concept, right? Too much focus on every single minute detail can be overwhelming.
Right.
If you're too zoomed out, you miss the bigger picture.
Okay, got it.
So it's like finding that right lens to look through, not too zoomed in, not too zoomed out to really understand what it is you're looking at.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's about finding that sweet spot where you're engaged, you're challenged, but you're not overwhelmed by the information. And this applies not just to learning, but also to how we navigate the world around us.
Give me an example.
Mm.
How does that work in everyday life?
Imagine you're walking into a crowded room.
Okay.
Your brain is not processing every single detail of every face.
That would be too much.
It's focusing on key features, expressions, familiar voices, and it's helping you assess the situation quickly so you can decide how to engage.
Wow.
That's optimal grip in action.
Our brains are filtering out so much information all the time.
All the time.
Otherwise, we would be completely overwhelmed.
We would be.
That's pretty remarkable.
This brings us to another fascinating aspect of how our brains work, and that's this constant process of filling in the gaps.
Do you mean like how we can finish each other's?
Not quite, although that's a great example of how we anticipate and predict in social situations. But I'm actually talking about something even more fundamental to how we perceive the world.
Really?
Let's try a little exercise.
Okay.
I want you to picture a blank wall in your mind.
Okay. Just a plain white wall ready for, well, nothing.
Here's the thing. You're not actually seeing the entire wall at once. Your brain is only processing a very small portion of the visual information, and it's filling in the rest based on your expectations and past experiences.
Wait, really? My brain is basically just making an educated guess about what the rest of the wall looks like. That's kind of trippy.
It does this all the time, not just with visual input, but with all sorts of sensory information. This filling in process helps us navigate the world more efficiently because we're not stuck constantly processing every single detail.
That's incredible. It's like our brains are constantly creating a simulation of the world around us based on what we already know.
This leads us to a really crucial difference between human intelligence and artificial intelligence.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting.
While computers can process information at incredible speeds, they lack this inherent drive that we as humans have.
So you're saying a computer wouldn't be moved by a beautiful piece of music or feel a sense of wonder looking at the stars. It's just data to them.
Exactly. And that's because we are what we call autopoietic beings.
Auto what now?
I know it's a mouthful.
You're going to have to break that down for me.
Okay, so autopoiesis essentially means self-making or self-producing. Unlike, let's say, a tornado, which is self-organizing, but it's not self-preserving, living organisms are driven by this deep inherent need to maintain their own existence.
Right. It's like survival.
Exactly. And because we are constantly striving to survive and thrive, we care about the information that we process. It's deeply personal. We notice things, we commit to things, we anticipate things, and it's all intertwined with this drive to understand our world and our place in it.
Wow. Okay, so I'm really starting to see how all these pieces fit together. It's like our brains are these incredible self-organizing systems that are constantly evolving and adapting and, yes, even filling in the gaps.
Yeah.
All to help us make sense of the world around us.
Right.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. Just like any other complex system, our brains are capable of amazing things, but they also have their quirks, right?
For sure.
Those same mechanisms that are helping us survive and thrive can sometimes lead us astray a little bit.
Oh, totally. You talk about how we can be stubborn or jump to conclusions or even convince ourselves of things that aren't true.
Yeah. Our brains are pattern recognition machines, right? That's how we make sense of the world. But sometimes those patterns can lead to biases and blind spots. Remember how we were talking about our ancestors and how they had to be really quick on the draw to survive?
Better safe than sorry.
Exactly. And those instincts served a purpose back then. But in today's world, sometimes those same cognitive shortcuts can lead to misunderstandings or even prejudice or sometimes even harmful beliefs.
How do we avoid falling into those traps? It feels like we're wired for these biases.
We are wired for them, but we're also wired for something else that's really important, and that's critical thinking.
Yeah.
It's like having a mental antivirus software.
Love that.
It helps us identify and challenge those faulty assumptions before they can take root.
Okay, so how do we get more of this mental antivirus?
Well, it all starts with awareness. You know, we need to recognize that our brains, they're capable of incredible feats of logic and reason, but they're also prone to biases. Once we understand that, we can start to question our own assumptions, we can seek out different perspectives, and be more open to changing our minds when we're presented with new information.
So it's not just about being intelligent, it's about being wise with our intelligence.
Very well said. And this brings us to kind of a classic example of how our assumptions can limit our thinking, and it's called the 9-dot problem.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of this one?
Refresh my memory.
Imagine a square made up of 9 dots, 3 rows of 3.
Yeah.
The challenge is to connect all 9 dots using 4 straight lines without lifting your pen from the paper.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds easy enough, right?
It's harder than it sounds.
And that's because we tend to assume that we need to stay within that imaginary square that's formed by the dots. Our own assumptions create this sort of mental box that limits the solutions we can come up with.
We get focused on what we think we know,
Right.
that we miss out on possibilities.
Exactly. And that's kind of a great metaphor for life in general, isn't it?
Sure.
Like, our ingrained beliefs and assumptions can prevent us from seeing things from different angles, coming up with creative solutions, or being open to new experiences.
You got to learn to think outside the box, both literally and metaphorically.
By challenging assumptions, questioning beliefs, and embracing new perspectives, we can unlock more of our potential.
I love that.
It's the key to growth and a much deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Absolutely. This has been an incredible deep dive. We've covered so much ground today, from the evolutionary roots of our intelligence to those quirky autopilot moments to the importance of really cultivating that critical thinking. So as we wrap things up, what's one key takeaway that our listeners can put into practice today?
Remember that intelligence, it's not fixed. It's a process, and it's all about framing and anticipating. Pay attention to the frames that you're using in your own life. Those assumptions and beliefs and perspectives that are shaping your view of the world.
Yes.
Question them, challenge them, and be open to expanding them.
I love that. So listeners, as you go about your day, just notice those moments where maybe you're making assumptions or jumping to conclusions, or maybe you're just feeling stuck in a particular way of thinking. Those are your opportunities to practice a little framing anticipation of your own. And remember, there's always more to learn, more perspectives to consider, and more to discover about this incredible world inside your own mind.
Well said.
That's a wrap on another deep dive. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing and those aha moments coming.